Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, has been ringing around leaders in the region trying to persuade them not to escalate the conflict. And he's spoken of Britain's key role, as he sees it, in deterrence. How much credibility does Britain have in the region? Are we in any sense a player?
We're a player in one sense. I mean, we do have some military capacity, but I'll get onto that in a moment. But we're also a player in the sense that, you know, the King of Jordan is very pro-British. The people from the leadership of the United Arab Emirates and other countries have often been educated in Britain, and many of them like this country very much. However, we do appear very much like the mouse that roars. I mean, Grant Shapps now, currently, I think his fifth job is Defence Secretary. He is completely unfit for that post. The idea that we are simultaneously cutting back the British Army to 72,000 people, which was last seen at the end of the War of Spanish Succession in 1715, and then we're suggesting that we're somehow a significant power. We're not anymore, really. And so we can be part of a cheerleading group for perhaps some of the things that are going to happen diplomatically, but we're not, and we have some very competent diplomats who have access to the highest echelons of the Israeli government and elsewhere, but we're not really, we're not really a big player anymore in the Middle East, and we delude ourselves if we think we are.
Brian, there were protests in cities around the Middle East yesterday night after it was assumed that an Israeli strike had hit the hospital in Gaza. That's now, as I was saying, very much disputed. Hezbollah is already skirmishing with Israel on the Lebanese border. But how keen are governments in the Middle East to get involved in this?
I think not keen at all, but that doesn't mean that it won't happen. Wars, especially fast-moving conflicts like this with an information space that is frankly out of control, toxic, and very, very difficult to understand in real time, amplifies the risk of miscalculation. And I think that what we're seeing right now is, protests that are sparked by social media videos, many of which are unverified, claims that are unverified, and so on. And so, I fear that this is one of those watershed moments. It was, Ukraine and the war with Russia has also been a testing ground for this, but it's sort of a choose your own reality information space, where people are now able to just sort of pick what they want to believe and then act upon it. And then governments are responding in real time to those events, those protests that are sparked by things that may or may not be true. So you have, governments that are trying to walk a fine line diplomatically, but then as they're meeting, the events are changing on the ground based on what's happening on, Elon Musk's, Twitter zombie that is basically broken as a vector for reliable information. And this is the kind of thing where I think, again, anytime you look at the history of warfare, miscalculation is a central part of things going wrong. And that's what I'm most worried about is, people misreading the environment or the events based on false information, which I think is more dangerous than it's been in modern history.
Is public feeling in the US squarely behind Israel? Because traditionally it has been.
Yeah, I mean, Israel has been a longstanding U.S. ally, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, regardless of, political events. That being said, there's been a splintering over events in Israel and in Gaza with, some elements of the far left much more prone to acting as apologists for Hamas. Some elements of the far right acting as though, Palestinian lives do not matter at all. And, I think the consensus that exists in U.S. foreign policy is that this is something where the U.S. has a long-term strategic goal that backs Israel. And I think, Biden is squarely within that remit. So regardless of what the political fallout is from, sort of the next 12 months heading into the 2024 election, I don't think that a major geopolitical alignment realignment will happen. And I do think that, Biden would probably put more emphasis on civilian protection than Trump would if he was president at this moment. But I think there's a significant consensus in the center of American politics that U.S. backing for Israel is a long-term core strategic goal of the country.